Welcome to the Nutritious and Delicious podcast with me, Bethany. Our mission is to support busy parents all over the world to learn time management while taking care of your nutritional, physical, and mental health. After all, a healthy family starts with a healthy parent. So I'm really excited today. I have Leticia here with me. And Leticia has actually been a personal trainer for the last 20 years in Calgary. And she's worked mainly with women who've had children. And when she's actually learned about this with her son, started learning more about bodies and what we're going to go through as we're pregnant, right? Getting older, and specifically the pelvic floor. So I'm super excited to have you on the show here today, Leticia.
Hi, yeah, I'm super excited to be here. This is actually my first podcast that I've ever done. So very excited.
Yeah, I love it. So I'm really excited actually because Leticia actually trained me at the gym after I had my second son. So I have personal experience. I've done this with her and I get it. And it's interesting. And I'm really excited to talk about this topic today because we're going to be talking all about working out post babies, which is an exciting topic to talk about. So
I
a
could
lot
go
of
on
the,
and on.
sorry?
I could go on and on.
Yeah, I find a lot of the moms here, it's a lot of like pelvic floor issues that I think a lot of women, experience. And even after having my second was very different from having my first. I found with my first, I bounced back super fast. And my second, we'll get into obviously, but the pelvic floor, everything, like your abdominal muscles are all changing. And I think the more kids you have, you're probably finding that you get people that are needing that issue, helping you with
Definitely.
that. So I actually want to go into sort of why today, you decided to become a personal trainer and what is equipping you to help these ladies here.
Well, it's a long story how I
Mhm.
got to get to personal training. Um, when I first went back to school, so I graduated, and then I went from high school, and then I went um, to post secondary. I originally wanted to be a dietitian. That
Oh,
was my
wow.
goal. Yeah.
Okay.
And then that all got kiboshed because at 20, I got rheumatoid arthritis.
Oh, wow.
So if people don't know, it's an immune deficiency disease. And it is, or can be, very debilitating. So I actually didn't walk for about 2 years. And one of the things that got me back on my feet was exercise. So you don't think that when you're in that much pain, exercise is actually going to help you out, but it does. So I just started really slow and ended up building myself back up. And of course, I saw physios and all that. But by the time I was ready to go back to university, I was 26 years old. And I had changed my focus and I decided to work. I wanted to become a recreation therapist. So I did my bachelor's in recreation studies. And then I moved to Calgary. So I did my bachelor's. I'm from Vancouver, but I did my bachelor's in Winnipeg. And then I moved to Calgary. And in Calgary, I didn't have the same experiences working as a recreation therapist as what I was really looking for.
Mm-hmm.
So I switched focus and I moved into personal training because fitness was such a big part of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And so at about 30, I became a personal trainer, did all my certifications for that, became a group fitness instructor as well. And then a few years later, I did my pre and postnatal certification.
I love it.
Yeah.
So, I noticed obviously like when we kind of like hung out and stuff, you told me sort of about like your son and kind of getting into it yourself. What did you find like when you first started working out after having children? Like, was it different for you?
I think one of the biggest surprises, I guess, was that when your doctor says that you can go back to doing regular activity, it doesn't really mean that you can go back to actually gym life. So regular
Yeah.
activity, I believe what they mean is that you can go for long walks and you can
Yeah.
maybe do the stairs more and all that kind of stuff. But they're never specific about it. And as a personal trainer at the time, I really wanted to understand that in a more specific way.
Mm-hmm.
So I started doing some more research. I started talking to a few physiotherapists as well as my doctor, and just all the opportunities that I ever had to ask questions. I started asking a lot of questions.
Yeah.
And through that pre and postnatal certification, they do give you a bunch of information of what exercisers are safe, when to start exercising, when not to start exercising. But during pregnancy as well as after. And and you really you're supposed to start slow. So when I started back, I kind of made myself a bit of a guinea pig, and I did have a C-section with my first. So I did have that 8 weeks where I had to do nothing, and going
Right.
up and down the stairs and taking care of my baby was more than enough. And then just walking is kind of really where you should start.
Yeah.
Even if you've had a natural delivery with no interference, you should still start with walking. If they're going to say you can start regular activities, definitely don't start running. And there's a few others that you want to stay away from, because until your pelvic floor has fully healed, you always run the risk, even if you don't have immediate problems, you run the risk of having long-term problems later on.
Yeah. I've noticed that with
Yeah.
people in my life as well, like prolapses and things like that, because getting back into it, and it wasn't right away and things like that. But I guess there could be there's a big difference obviously in having a natural delivery versus a C-section. A C-section is major abdominal surgery, and you kind of have the green light from the doctor, right? And they say, you can go back to, what you're doing. Obviously, my personal experience too, like I was obviously more fit in my pregnancy with both of them. Like I know with both of them, I could probably physically work out with them at a normal sort of pace until I was like 7 months. And then it was just, they were in the stomach was in the way too much. And I'm like, nope, now everything's getting too comfortable. And then you get that jolting pain or something down your leg or spine. And you're like, yeah, I shouldn't be doing this anymore. So you kind of go to that walking, like you said. And even that during pregnancy can bring on Braxton Hicks and all that good stuff, so it's like, oh my goodness. So you're kind of like, do I want to do this anymore? So you kind of just start to vegetate a little bit. And then, I noticed that for myself. What have you found as like the main problems with moms after having babies and like trying to get back into like tone and strength? And like, there's a difference, I think, between like a regular gym goer versus somebody that's like a light exerciser.
Definitely. Yeah. So I find that those of us who are running and jumping and doing heavy weightlifting before baby, we try and do as much as we can throughout. But like you said, if you have Braxton Hicks, if you have these jolting pains, you need to slow down. You need to, listen to your body, so to speak. And then afterwards, those same people want to go right back into it. So for them, when the doctor says you can resume normal activities, that's what they're thinking. They're thinking, oh, I can start lifting heavy weight again. I can start doing this, that, and the other thing. I think most of us know that we're supposed to start slow, especially if we haven't done anything for a while.
Right.
But then, then you have your, I don't even want to say maybe type A personalities that just don't want to take that into consideration. Maybe they've been dying to go back to the gym or whatever that is. And so they go too hard, too fast. For the people who don't go to the gym, I would say, same thing applies, but what if you are now become desperate because you've gained all this weight and you really want to shed the weight quickly? I think that's where you come in more so than maybe running back to the gym or getting your own personal trainer right away. There's a safe way to do it for sure, but it should be done slowly for sure.
Yeah, nutrition is a huge thing. And I think even throughout pregnancy, I've noticed, even from going from one baby to the other, I gained differently with my first. And I was actually more active with my first pregnancy, I would say probably, and regained quicker than my second. And that's why I ended up having Leticia as like my personal trainer, because I really wanted somebody that understood postpartum and wasn't going to shove me back into something that I could easily tear internal muscles and things like that. Like I wanted somebody that understood that. And as much as I wanted to go, I think fast and, but I did really well. I remember that. But I think one thing I do remember is the stability. I think that really caught me off guard. I think even just doing like a regular thing, I think we were trying to get me to stand on one leg with something, and like my core wasn't there. So I remember like wobbling all over the place and being like, what's wrong with me? And you're like, your stability is gone. Like your core, like even though I haven't had a C-section or anything, like my core wasn't there.
No.
And
it
thinking,
takes a while to get back.
Yeah. And I thought, like, what the, like, I haven't only been out of it probably for, I think it was 3 months after I had him, I was back at the gym. But still, even before that, like I was pretty fit and active, and I just was quite shocked, I think, to see how my body responded. And I think a lot of moms do that. And I could imagine a lot of women give up and think, oh, well, it's just mom life now, right? And that's
Yeah.
where, the self-pity comes in. And I think more of the weight gain comes in.
Yeah.
So, what are
Yeah. It's
some,
tough.
yeah, it is tough. It's,
Yeah.
what are some exercises that you could recommend to women to stay away, from while, I guess, pregnant and sort of postpartum, and why?
Yeah. Um, First would be running. So if you are a runner already, they do recommend up to 6 months
Oh,
of
wow.
no running. Yeah, after baby. So whether you have a C-section or whether you do a vaginal delivery, both have changed your body significantly. And the main issue with running, or there's a few others I'll add on to that, but the reasons are all the same. Because of that stretching that happens through your joints,
Right.
otherwise we wouldn't be able to deliver, and ligaments, that needs to wear off, so to speak, before our bodies can kind of strengthen back up. Also, if you did have an episiotomy, or of any kind, any degree, so to speak,
Mhm.
I would definitely go check with the pelvic floor physio before you actually start anything aggressive.
Right.
And also with the diastasis. So when our abs separate,
Mhm.
then that causes an instability through the back. And you don't want to mess with that either, right? So
Right.
when it comes down to it, I would say the top 3 things to stay away from would be running, plyometrics for the same reason, and then heavy lifting. So heavy lifting to me is 20 pounds or more. And the main
Interesting.
reason for that is because if you were doing heavy bodybuilding before and then you don't start building back up. So say you start at 10 pounds and go up from there, or even 5 pounds and go up from there, you will cause more damage because it's just too much too soon. Also, you always run the risk of pushing out instead of bringing it in. So when you're doing a pelvic floor contraction or a Kegel, you're lifting your pelvic floor up towards your head. Not that far up, obviously, but
Right.
in that direction. And then with your transverse abdominis, you're bringing that in towards your spine. With those 2 contractions, we always run the risk, and a lot of us will do it without even knowing, of pushing out instead of pulling in.
Interesting.
So, how do you know for sure that you're doing it right? Go see a pelvic floor physio, really.
Mhm.
Now, I had a bad a tear from a episiotomy with my second, and so I really wanted to know whether I was healing properly. So I went back to the pelvic floor physio, saw her, checked in with her. She said, you're doing the as good as you could do
Right. Under the
having a
circumstances.
episiotomy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's all I can ask for, is that I'm doing the best I can. But I also had to have I had a hernia from my second pregnancy that results, or I should say a diastasis that resulted in a hernia
Oh,
eventually. So I
wow.
had to have that physically repaired. I couldn't repair that on my own, unfortunately, but
Is that
happened.
is that out of, like, exercising, would you say, the hernia thing? Like, is that because that's like a bulge
I
of
don't think it
something?
was the hernia. No, I don't think it was from exercising. First, it's in your genes. So my dad had hernias, so that means that
Oh,
I have a 25% um,
okay.
better chance of having it. So there's that. And then second, it was really from having my abs were too tight going into it for
Right.
pregnancies, and so my belly button popped out.
That's pretty normal though, isn't it, when your belly button pops out?
It is, but not to the point
Oh.
where it's never gonna pop back in after.
Oh, I see, okay.
Yeah. So
Interesting.
having that hole in the middle of your stomach causes you to now not have the use properly of your abs, and therefore your back can really be affected by it,
Interesting.
among many other things.
I didn't realize it affected the back, but then think about it,
Yeah.
your back will overcompensate for the front.
Exactly. Yeah. And we all have, I don't know what it is, but we all have back pain at some point in our lives,
Right.
right? Um, Now being able to do those core contractions, like your pelvic floor and your transverse abdominis, then starts getting the multifidus, which is in the spine, firing. It's the only way the multifidus will actually fire. And so if you can't do the pelvic floor transverse contraction because you have a hernia or you have your diastases, then those muscles won't fire. And then that is actually what your core muscles are.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I know you touched on this, but I found this like massively through both my pregnancies, and it's probably just how maybe it goes for myself throughout any of them, I guess. But ligament pain, like ligament problems. I looked into it because I didn't have the diastasis, whatever it's called, but what's the one with the hip or the pubic symphysis or something where it's like
That's exactly. Yeah.
I guess it's trying
There's
to
a lot
tell
of
people
pain associated with
it
that.
is. It's literally like, if I'm sure a lot of women experience this too, and even after, I noticed it right after pregnancy for several months too, but it's like where you step out of the vehicle or you put your pants on and it feels like someone's pulled your hips apart. And
Ouch.
it's like a joint, like it doesn't feel right. And I remember I found this with the exercise where you sat on the machine and you pushed your legs outward or inward. It was pushing the legs inward.
Yeah.
Because obviously you're pushing weight, and I was like, I feel like I'm gonna break. Like, so I had to stop doing that one, and I noticed that was about 6-7 months in.
Yeah.
But listen to your body, because if you're not listening to that, you're gonna make the problem worse. And I noticed both of my pregnancies, I had that even after having the baby and stuff. So like, it takes a really long time when you think about like the internal ligaments. If somebody has something like that, like the what's it called? Sorry, again, the diastasis with the abdomens or the ligament issues with like their hip joints. Would you recommend certain exercises for them throughout their pregnancy or even after that maybe they should stay away from?
It really just depends on what causes the pain.
Right.
So besides the three that I've already said, so running and plyometrics and heavyweight training, build really slow. So honestly, start with body weight exercises, start with walking, and then build slowly. So if you feel pain somewhere, just stop. Do something else that may or may not work the same muscles that will not cause the pain. But there's tons of other options out there for in a ton of different ways, and you know what I mean? Like there are options. You don't have to do that inner outer thigh machine. You can do something with your bands.
Yeah, I think bands are a good one too, because it's that resistance, I guess, you still get. So we've talked about the ones to avoid. What are some of the kind of ones that I would say to maybe to help mom, even like if she's preparing herself for birth, for like her muscles or just like strength in general, or even after, like what's something that probably the body is needing, I guess, after having a baby, knowing that you've got weaker muscles there now?
Yeah. One of the first things I would do is really practice your Kegels, like continue through that as long as you can. And if you can't, or even if you're not sure about it, or you've had some sort of trauma, I would definitely go see a pelvic floor physio. I don't think I can say that enough. I kind of wish that it just came along with recovery. They just said, you can go see your lactation specialist and your pelvic floor physio in the same building.
I was going to say, why don't we have this like whole package? Like I was talking to somebody earlier today, baby chiropractor lady, and we were just kind of talking about like even preparing yourself for having a baby. She was talking about like she was in Hong Kong or something, and that for like 30 days or something, I think it's 30 or 40 days before the baby, like you get yourself prepared and you've got like someone there taking care of you and you're taking in bone broth and all this stuff. I find in the Western society, it's kind of like have your kid get out. Like now you have to go back to work and recover at home from a massive C-section or something. And you're like feeling like you're falling apart.
Yeah. It totally is. It's like in and out. When I had my C-section, I mean, that was my first baby, so I didn't know what the hell I was doing.
Yeah.
And I had met people before who had bounced back, and they were actually, oh yeah, I feel great. I'm going to come back into the gym at 5 weeks. I could still not walk really well at 5 weeks. I don't know that anybody could do it.
I know.
So I would definitely take the time to recover. And if you're really that desperate to get back into it, just start walking. if you can walk, just walk. Honestly, walking is one of the best activities out there. You can increase your speed to get your heart rate going, you can decrease, or you just take breaks if you need to, right? There's so many different options with walking. I feel like I'm kind of digressing though. Can you like bring me back to where I'm supposed to be answering your
No,
question?
that's great. I love it. I think that's given us a lot of information of like the before and after of everything of, working out pregnancy and after, because that's kind of the most vulnerable time I've noticed, even personally myself, is, you go in and maybe you're working out really hard, like all the way up until sort of a stage of pregnancy where your body's like, nope, no more, like we're done here. And I think it's the postpartum. I think a lot of moms, that's where they're struggling. Is I think like you said, you hit the nail on the head there. I think they need the pelvic physio stuff before and the internal conditioning, I think, to help them in order to be able to do these exercises. And when they do start working out, to be mindful and walking and all that. And like, I remember even my first, I had him in the summer. So it was easy for me to get outside and do like walking uphill with a stroller. And
Yeah.
that's another good way of resistance, because you're
Yeah.
pushing up, a hill. The What I was going to ask you though too is, we're in Canada, so it's like always cold here in the winter, most of our
I
months.
know. Yeah.
So if people can't walk and get outside, or they're isolated or something like that, is there something at home maybe they can do, minus a workout video,
For sure.
that they could kind of try and do for themselves?
Yeah, there's always stuff you can do, even if you have equipment or if you don't have equipment. So, what I did, the first thing I did, and this isn't at home, but I just went to the mall and I
Oh,
walked the
wow.
mall like round in circles
That's actually a really good way to get that done, is like
with my
shop them
son. They
all.
had a nursery room there too, which was nice. So you could just, when you needed to nurse, you could just go to the nursery room and be there with other moms. But otherwise, I just went to the mall because my son was born in January. Nobody can go for walks in
I
January. It's
know.
crazy.
It's like blizzard
Uh,
month out there.
It's so cold. And so then, but at home, lots of core work you can do for sure, especially if you haven't had any issues, but gentle, of course.
Yeah.
And lots of work, like, uh, sorry, I'm now blank, but strength training is what I was trying to say,
Yeah.
with a band.
That's a good idea. I think with even at home, having like a stairs, like most of us do have stairs in our house, but
Yeah.
utilizing your stairs is a good way as well. What about things like squatting? Is that like without
Yeah,
any resistance? Is that still kind of something in the,
definitely. So think about it. Whenever you sit down, it's a squat.
okay.
So whenever
So
you're going down towards your couch or your chair or your toilet, that's a
yeah,
squat. So yeah, a squat is definitely, and there's so many different ways you can do it. You don't have to go down to 90 degrees to start. You can go to 45. You're doing it anyways.
yeah,
You can do it assisted, right? So there's lots of different ways of doing squats, push-ups, all the traditional stuff you can still do as long as you don't have any, outstanding issues. But that's where I would start, is with that kind of stuff if you can't walk.
that's great. That gives a lot of moms kind of like the base, because again, there's a lot of moms out there that still kind of like, well, now how do I go to a gym or things like that with a baby? And I think
It's
even just
hard.
starting at home, like not every gym has like childcare. I've noticed as
No.
well. And I noticed for me when I first started with my first son, I had him going into the gym, but every single time I put him in there, he came out with a cold. So it was like, then
Yeah,
he'd have to recover for a week, and then I couldn't go to
yeah,
the gym. And it was like
right?
this vicious
Yeah,
circle of,
it
because
is.
yeah.
Or
So
they would start crying, they didn't like
yeah,
being there, right? Whatever that looked like, you only got a 5-minute workout. But even if you can only do a 5-minute workout at home, but say you can do that once a day or maybe 3 times a day, it's better than nothing, right?
exactly. I
And
think
that's why I
that's
think too, you have to start thinking about it in a more creative way.
even dancing. I do that with my boys sometimes. Like I'll just put some
Oh,
tunes on and
yeah.
just get them to dance around and stuff. And that's a good
I love
stress
that.
reliever too. So
Yeah.
put some fun tunes on and dance around. And I think even if you're just sort of pent up at home and you're going a little stir crazy, because again, if you have babies in like sort of the dead of winter and you can't do anything, like what are you supposed to do at home? So putting on some music, and the babies and the toddlers love it too, if you kind of
They
dance them
do.
around and play with them
Yeah.
and things like that and kind of
Yeah.
make it a game. So
Yeah.
I love it. So is there any other things that you would like to kind of let the moms know about, or anything, or where they can find you?
Well, you can find me on my website. It's www.welldone, WELLDEDUNN. Sorry, I don't even know how to spell my own website. Fitness.com. So welldonefitness.com. My
Fitness.com.
last name is Dunn,
Awesome.
DUNN. So that's where the Dunn comes from. Or else you can find me on Facebook at Well Done Fitness Personal Training. As well as on Instagram, and that's at welldone_fitness.
Wonderful.
You can
I
find me
love
at
it.
all those places. I can't really think of anything else. When it comes to postpartum and doing any kind of personal training, it ends up being very individual. And so,
Mhm.
whatever that person needs, I usually just adapt to
Right.
whatever. And sometimes you don't know until you get started. So, you start out slow and safe and build from there.
Lovely. And so
Yeah.
Leticia actually has her own home gym now, which is amazing. So you do offer online fitness for moms that you can do
I
anywhere,
do.
right?
Yeah, almost every day I'm on Zoom.
I love it. So that
Yeah,
this is what's helped, I think, even though we've had all this crazy time the last few years, but this has sort of brought people to an online space now where you can help more people anywhere in the world.
that's true. Yeah, and it's so much fun.
Awesome. Well, I'll put those in the notes for everybody for her website and social media. So thank you so much for coming on today, Leticia. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me. I had a great time.